Hey, you're about to watch a clip from my Empty Opinions podcast. If you would like to check out the full episode, you can listen to it with the links in the description below. But without further ado, let's jump straight into the clip. You know what's so funny? In speaking of podcasts, I wanted to talk to you about this since you also interested in doing a podcast. And I guess, probably listen to podcasts too.
Yeah.
Why do you think is not a very common thing for, let's say, people, or maybe I don't know, but to me, it doesn't seem like podcasts is like a very popular medium for, to be politically correct, I guess, for like urban, young people. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think that many people, like even my age, or like, let's say my sister's age, who's like about to turn 18.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, podcasts isn't that popular, I don't think. Why do you think that is? Because I feel like it needs to be. That's something, if there's anything that I want to get, that I want to happen from this podcast and anybody I know, is to make podcasting like a more common media for people to, use to listen and or watch to. Like I tell my sister all the time, you should listen to podcasts. I have obviously I have my own. Every time I see somebody that says, right? Like every time I see somebody who says I'm kind of interested in doing a podcast, I would tell them like fucking do it, because I don't know that many people that are even listening to them, let alone want to do it. But why do you think that's not a popular medium right now for like our generation, let's say?
Easily, the first thing I could think of is when I was growing up, like at my charter school, my middle school, my teachers would talk about podcasts, say this and that, and I feel like the way how younger people interpret podcasts is like it's almost it's similar to books in a way. You know what
like
I'm saying?
educational, like boring.
Boring.
Oh,
like,
right.
Some like it don't get advertised correctly. Like people don't think of it like, oh, listen to a podcast just so you could like hear some like funny shit. Like these are some funny podcasts. Like Hannibal Buress, that's like he has like my favorite podcast. And it's hilarious.
Exactly. I think that's what. Yeah, you're right. And it's also, I think, it seems like a very like uppity media. Like whenever you think of podcasts, a lot of people think of like fucking NPR. It was like, now we're gonna be introducing this new audio advance. It's like fucking sound effects in the background. It's all very well produced. I'm like, what the fuck is, it's like, that's what people, you're right. I think people do think that that's what podcasting is. But no, podcasting is literally just radio, just episodic radio that you get like fucking on demand radio, pretty much.
I know everybody remember them Steve Harvey like shits in the morning with they like parents and all that in the car, like, and I know that shit was entertaining for people to listen to.
I know, so that's what podcast. But I think you're right. Podcasting just has that connotation. And I mean, at the end of it also has, in other words, it also feels like it's a white thing. Let's be completely honest. Podcasting seems like a very, like, white people have been fucking listening to podcasts since like 2008. You know what I mean? It's a very, it does also have the connotation of it being kind of white because of its like educational and boring. So I think if anything with this podcast, like I want to dismantle, because I mean, it's as simple as just you talking. You know what I mean? And if you're interesting, people are going to listen to, right? It's not like, and a lot of people do start podcasts. And I've been told this because, I've talked to other people about podcasts, and then they told me, like, let's say like college students, they're like, you tell them, oh, I started a podcast. And to college students, to white college students, what that means is some uninteresting fucking white guy with his fucking uninteresting white friend just talking about, yo, dude, I was just, isn't that crazy, dude? It's like the most boring shit. It's not entertaining. So at the end of the day, it just, it has to have, it should be entertaining. And that's the thing, because podcasting, that's another thing. Podcasting is so easy that anybody could do it. And but a lot of people are probably not interesting. So that when they start it, you're like listening to people talk about the most uninteresting shit. Like, bro, I went to the store the other day. I bought some chips. It's like, yo, what flavor of chips did they get? I'm like, and probably people feel like, I feel like people, for whenever I say that I have a podcast or something, I can see the wheels turning like, what the fuck do they talk about? Because probably they're probably like, what the fuck is, like, probably nothing interesting. It was like boring shit. But
definitely,
but I just want fucking more, it's somewhat selfish because obviously I want more people to listen to my fucking podcast. You know what I mean? But it's also,
and that's a good ass podcast. Like when my cousin, with his own podcast. He was just listening to yours, and then I think we was talking about it before we started one of our podcasts. He loves your podcast just That's because great. Of like, it's so like I'm over here watching you do everything and shit. Like everything is just so much. It's high quality.
Okay, that's good.
It's so
I
high quality,
that.
So entertaining and everything.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. I really do focus. I really do try to put that effort into it because I do want it to be.
Bro, from the start of it, like the bitch part, all that shit. All that.
The bitch part. Yeah, that's the best part of this shit. No, that's so funny. No, I appreciate that. But yeah, it's I do want more people to listen to podcasts just in general, just because I guess, you know, and it's also something I've been listening to since I was younger. Yeah. And the way I always say this, the reason subconsciously that I even started a podcast and I've enjoyed it so much, I used to listen to podcasts in a way to learn English because I moved here when I was 11, so I didn't know any English. So I moved here, and from the jump, I remember just listening to podcasts, and it was, you know, because it's just people talking. Yeah. It's like a conversation, and you kind of pick up on that, like kind of, you know, conversation or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? You just pick up on that shit, and it's almost like an authentic way to learn English because it's like how people really talk, as opposed to like an English class with the like specific words you're never gonna hear ever. So it's like that. So it's always had a soft spot for me.
That's smart as hell. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's smart. So maybe, you know, some people, if you want to learn another language, maybe start listening to Spanish podcasts.
I literally was thinking about that while you were saying that.
Isn't that funny? Like, yeah, it's like start listening to Spanish podcasts and just have people talking in Spanish in your ear for like 2 hours, and then maybe you pick up something from it. I don't know. But I was gonna say something. What was it? Oh, and also the reason I love podcasts so much, and I think what I do translates, you know, why I think my podcasts are entertaining, because the way I always have had conversations with people, I figured, I'm like, this will be like a great podcast because I try to think about things like in a deeper way, like try to look at it from all different angles, and just, I'm a curious person, so I try to learn more and more. And I've always do that with conversations with people, and I'm like, yo, I mean, this conversation would be kind of good. Because I would just have random conversations that would sound like podcasts in my head from all the podcasts that I've listened to before. Yeah. And I'm like, I should just start a podcast and just do what I already do with people.
Right.
On a podcast. And it has worked.